Hi, everybody. This is Lee, and I'm talking about the recent scandal with the Marine Corps of the nude photo sharing of female Marines and the resulting fallout from that. I waited to speak on this issue because I wanted to get the perspective of a female Marine. And one of them has given an interview with Rolling Stone magazine. She's a veteran Marine, and she speaks about the culture that kind of makes it seem like not such a surprise to her that this occurred. And I'm also wanting to point out that I've seen comments online where there have been men who seem to feel like, well, these are 18-year-old boys going into combat. They're under stress, and so this is how they relieve stress or something. Is the excuse being made? And it is an excuse. Using age as a factor, also using combat as a factor. For one, some of these incidences occur stateside in academies, trainings, duty stations within the United States. It's not a combat situation. And then also using the 18-year-old age factor. Often this type of sexual harassment that occurs is not 18-year-old boys. It's actually commanding officers, trainers, people who are higher up in the hierarchy and therefore are not 18, but know better, and still use their position of power to humiliate and degrade their own sisters in arms. And so that's not an excuse either. I'm going to go through what this female Marine said about the photo sharing incident, and then I'm also going to talk about the invisible war, which is exploring the high incidence of rape in military settings. So I'm going to start off with this Rolling Stone article. What civilians don't understand about military sexual harassment. One Marine veteran explains why she's not surprised by the Corps' recent nude photo sharing scandal. And so she says that at her officer candidate school, one of the female sergeant instructors just came right out and said that if you are a woman in the Marine Corps, you're either a bitch, a dyke, or a hoe. And so this is how they prepare the female Marines for what they will face, not from enemy combatants, but from their own brothers in arms, members of their own team, how they'll be perceived by members of their own team, and how they'll be treated by members of their own team, and attacked by members of their own team. And so this female Marine veteran says that as long as the U.S. Marine Corps tolerates toxic masculinity, women will be treated as second-class Marines. So she says that these experiences are why that she's not surprised by the recent scandal, or that misogyny remains alive and well in online military communities. She says that the recent publication of those photos was not about sex, that it was about power, and that much of the military's culture is predicated on gendered shame. And so she says that toxic masculinity encourages sexual aggression to the point of assault. Anything less than total domination is considered unmanly. And so you combine that with social media, she says, and GPS technology, and the stakes of gender-based shame get higher, and that the danger is not just from posting photos. Sites like Marines United enable stalking and harassment by listing the women's names, ranks, and duty stations. And so she says that men seem to post photos to these sites for two main reasons, both related in power dynamics. that sometimes the men feel threatened or slighted after a woman ends a relationship, and so they post revenge porn. Other times they try to increase their status among other men by posturing the bros before hoes attitude. And so she says that both are attempts to cure their own fundamental insecurities to make them feel man enough. And so they destroy women, degrade women, humiliate women in order to feel like men. And so what she says is that male Marines who are secure in their masculinity, who do not feel the need to puff themselves up by bullying their colleagues, must call out the cowards on their bullshit. Female NCOs and officers are faced with the moral choice to speak up, though they risk becoming targets, and that even the female officers need male Marines to be allies, just as in war. And so you see several types of men. There are those who actively will bully or shame and humiliate and degrade women. And then the response from some other men is to remain silent. They won't participate, but they won't stop it. And then you do have men who will call it out for what it is, cowardice, and put a stop to it. And so we need more of those men speaking up and speaking out to check their brothers. Growing into warriorhood, this female veteran says, and true manhood and not toxic masculinity requires maturity that many clearly do not have. She says that her recommendation is don't be one of the guys, be a man. Anything less is dishonorable. And so that's how she views that scandal. This is an interview with Amy Goodman. This is from 2012. It's about the Invisible War. It's a film that exposes rape and sexual assault, the epidemic in the United States military. And so this is 5 years ago, and so there's still issues. I watched a film myself years ago, and it's a group of women who basically tell the story of what happened to them, how they used to be so excited and passionate about their military service, and how the rape and sexual assault took that away from them. And so you hear statements from these women who talk about how they were responded to when they tried to report the assaults against them. And that they heard these things, such as, when you report something, you better be prepared for the repercussions. If a man gets accused of rape, it's a setup. The woman is lying. I could choose to report it, but if I wasn't, if they found out that what I was saying wasn't to be truthful, then I would be reduced in rank. You could lose your rate. You could lose rank. You could lose your school if you file a false report. So do you want to file a report? And so that's the confrontation that they get, the pushback. Also, even with the rape kit and everything, and my friend catching him raping me, they still don't believe me. I reported it 2 different times to my squad leader, and he told me that there's nothing he could do about it because I didn't have any proof. They actually did charge me with adultery. I wasn't married. He was. And that was the result of her reporting her rape. They took me before my lieutenant commander. He says, do you think this is funny? Is this a joke to you? She says, what do you mean? And he says, you're the 3rd girl to report rape this week. Are you guys all in cahoots? Do you think this is a game? And so these are the results of what happens when they try to report what happens to them. And so one of them says, as I was told, there's, only a few dozen females there at any time. And there's an incredible amount of harassment. And in units where there's harassment, that very much leads to rape. And there is quite a number of rapes that we discovered that took place over the last several years. And so this is from a UK write-up of that same movie, The Invisible War. For most of the women, their rapists were either their commanders, their seniors, or friends with they were friends with the decision makers. Again, not 18-year-olds, people who are higher up in rank. And so, again, that is an excuse. Reporting the rape was sometimes impossible, as they could only report it to the perpetrator, or just resulted in disbelief, condescension, and total criticism. Their perpetrators held all the power. And so I'll say finally that none of the women in the film The Invisible War saw justice for their attackers. Instead, many were subjected to investigations against their claims and treated like criminals. Several of the victims were even charged with adultery as they reported the rapes. And so that's what, again, according to what these military women say, that the sexual harassment leads to a rape culture, and so that they are related. And so what we see with the nude photo scandal, the effort to humiliate, degrade, and shame members of their own team, causing post-traumatic stress, unwanted pregnancies, even dishonorable discharges, and sometimes even suicide attempts as a result of what has been happening to these women. And so this is what is the result of not taking active steps to call these men out that perpetrate this humiliation, this culture of fear on members of their own team. Hopefully we'll see a change soon. It seems like this has been very much ingrained, but the more people speak out about it, that's the first step towards actually finding solutions and to make this rape culture stop. Silencing women definitely is not the answer. Attempting to intimidate women that's not the answer. And so hopefully as more women speak out, find the courage to speak out on what's been happening inside their experiences with the military, a change will come. Good luck.